Hello, I am Julie with Paisleys and Polka Dots, and in this video I'm going to show you how I painted our little snowman shelf sitter guy here. I'm just going to jump right in and get started. I went ahead and I base coated one coat of white paint to hit the body, and this is the little part that sits on the shelf, the little shelf piece, and I went ahead and base coated those. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I base coat this part. These are his legs. Now you do have several different sections to his legs. You have this back part that is going to get attached to the shelf base like this. So you don't have to paint this section here because it's all of this piece is going to get covered up with the overlays, but you do want to go ahead and you want to paint your edges because those will show. And then this piece will get layered over the top like this. Once you attach these two pieces, this is going to get glued over the top. So this is the piece you're going to want to paint for his body section, and then this piece is the foot overlay. So you're going to want to paint this top section. You don't need to paint this section here. Okay, so let's get started on painting his legs here. Now you can use any kind of white paint that you buy at your local hobby or craft store. You can even, if you want a kind of an off-white color, you can choose ivory if you want. For today, I'm just using this Simply White. It's by Mud Paint. It is a chalk paint. I like it because it's a little bit thicker, but again, the acrylic paints work just fine too. So when I paint, I'm just using a regular flat 3/4 inch brush. You can use foam brushes if you like. If you prefer to work with those, you can use sponges or even a roller. Anything that works, whatever you like to paint best. I always go around my outside edges first, cleaning up anything that gets on the front side. If it gets, globbed on, I'll wipe that off. And I find it easiest to go around my outside edges. Makes it a little bit quicker. Okay, and so this one will get painted. Like I said, this one does not. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint this. I try to paint going in the same direction in longer strokes, but this piece is going to get kind of grunged up. We're going to do some layering techniques, so it doesn't really matter what how precise your painting is. I love the techniques that where you don't have to be too precise with your painting, because if you don't feel like you're a good painter, then these techniques are always fun and easy, and you don't get frustrated with your final results. So like I said, just slap it on a coat of paint there. I will set this aside to dry. On your sides, you can go ahead and you can put a couple coats if you want. A lot of times those burned edges especially with white, take a little bit of extra paint to get that coverage that you want. But again, this is a distressed piece, so the coverage doesn't matter quite as much as if you were just painting it a quick solid color. Okay, so I have that one done. I'm going to set it aside. Here is the back layer. So I'm just going to paint the sides of this one because, like I said, the sides of the wood is going to show. All right, I'm going to go on to painting his boots now, and I am using the color by Americana. It's called Burnt Umber, and I'm just going to squirt a little bit of paint out here on my paper plate. And again, I'm going to go around the outside edges first. This one we only need to go around the outside edges. Actually, this one, because the color's so dark, you can just put a really quick coat on because the sides of the wood are already dark, but it's a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the sides. Okay, so I just went around the outside edges of this piece because this actually has 3 layers. You've got your base piece, your middle layer for his body, and then you've got the shoes themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this last layer here. Okay, now to paint the front side here, I want to show you something fun and easy, quick and easy to do for when you have holes like this and you don't want to, when you're using your paintbrush, let me wash this brush out here. When you're using your paintbrush and you're painting along, well, you might get paint in these little holes here. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm using just a regular makeup sponge, just cheapy makeup sponges. I'm going to dip it into my paint a little bit, get some paint on here, not a lot, and then you can go ahead and you can dab your sponge onto your wood, and then your paint isn't going to seep down into your little wood holes. So it makes it really quick and easy. It covers really quickly too. This is also a way to, if you want your piece to not have brush strokes, you can always sponge your paint on. It makes it quick and easy. So that's all there is to doing that. I do need a little bit more paint here. And I'll go ahead and do the other side. And like I said, I think I'll just go ahead and paint this whole thing using a sponge. You can see how quick and easy the sponges cover something. You just keep dabbing up and down. And if you want a heavier coverage, you can go ahead and paint a second coat on. There we go. Maybe you can see this. And as you can see, it's probably a little blotchy right now. If I put on a second coat, that is going to cover up some of that blotchiness that's on there right now, which I think I might. They're kind of boots, so I don't mind that they're different colors, you know, like worn work boots or kind of leather type of boots. I guess they would have some weathering and some different colors. So I'm going to kind of go with that look. What do you think? But I think I will, in certain areas, add a little bit more paint here. But you can see how quick and easy it is to sponge on this paint. There we go. That's now done. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside to let it dry. We also have 2 buttons here, but I'm not sure what color I want to paint those just yet. So I'm going to leave these aside for now. I did go ahead and paint his nose. I used Terracotta by Delta, and I put a couple coats on the side edges. Like I said, the laser, it tends to the burn edges, you have to cover it a little bit harder to cover up. So 2 coats on the sides, and then I just put 1 coat on the front, and I sanded it. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand the pieces that I've already painted. These are the pieces that I just painted white. Now I typically like to use 150 grit sandpaper, which I have a piece of right here. So it's 150 grit. This is the kind I typically use. Now I also have this purple kind. It's a it says medium smooth. It's also 150 grit, but it feels more coarse than this one. So I get a lot more distressing with this purple kind. So it's all in preference to what you like when it comes to sanding. So if you want a heavier sanding, then I would use a heavier grit. And if you like lighter sanding, then you use a lighter grit sandpaper. I'm going to be using this one right now, and I'm just going to rub along the edge and across the whole top. And you can kind of see the wood come through because we only did one coat of paint. Okay, let me brush this off. I'm brushing normally I would work over a trash can when I do a lot of my sanding, but you're not going to be able to see that. So you can kind of see the sanding or the distressing that I have on there. Let me do the big body part here. And I do sand in one direction. Sometimes you can sand in both. It doesn't matter. You know, it depends upon how you like your sanding. If you want more of a linen texture look, then you can sand both directions. But typically I sand in one direction. All right, so we have that done. The two body pieces here. Let me do this one too. All right, I have these pieces sanded now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand the boots here too while I have them out. And a lot of times I don't mix my sandpaper. So like if I just used white on this and now I go to the brown, it's going to leave a little bit of some of the white onto the wood. But for this technique, I think I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go with it. A lot of times I'll start with something and it won't end up, you know, it's like, well, that didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to, so I'll have to start over again. And that happens with a lot of things, but you know, when something's grunged up, it doesn't matter too much. Okay. So there's his shoes. You can see how distressed they are. All right. So I'm going to clean up this mess here and then I'll be back to show you the next step. Okay, now that I have my base coating painting all finished and it's been all sanded now I am going to use this texture paste by Ranger ink, and we're just going to use a brush, and I'm going to, it's kind of a thick, it looks like frosting actually, and I'm going to use this chippy paintbrush, and I'm just going to dip my brush into the, as you can see, it is like definitely like frosting consistency. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna brush it across here and there. It doesn't have, the whole surface does not need to be covered. You're just gonna brush it on in different places, as much as you want or as little as you want. And with this, I kind of went both directions when I did it. It's just going to kind of give this layered or texture effect. I'm kind of really loving this texture paste lately. I've used it for multiple projects and it's kind of fun and very easy to work with. Just kind of dab it on or paint it on or however, and it dries and it just gives you different textural looks. I even think it would be great like on a stencil, using stencils or something to give your backgrounds some texture. Different types of stencils, like maybe a beehive stencil or a, you know, whatever kind of stencil you have. I think it would be pretty cool. So I want to try that. We'll see how it goes if, you know, another project. But as you probably can't see this very well because it's probably all just blending in on the video. But as you can kind of see, I'm just dipping my paint in this texture here, and I'm just kind of brushing it on. And because I'm using the chippy brush, it's leaving like a heavier brush stroke marks. Like I said, I'm trying to get, you want to make sure, it's kind of hard to get on the edges because of how thick it is. Edges being this part, not the side part. But you do want to kind of get some on the edges so that it continues off of your wood. You get that texture off the side of the wood. And then we're just going to let it dry after it's all on. Like I said, I'm going both directions. Here and there, you know, you don't have to brush all the way. And it's heavier in some areas than others. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not in the video, but some sections are heavier than others. Some of, you know, like I said, I brushed both directions on it, so I'm going to set this one aside. I would think that you really don't have to do this part because you're going to put stuff on the shelf, but I think I'm going to do it anyway, just so that everything is cohesive, kind of looks the same throughout. But I don't think this board is quite as important. It's not going to show as much as his main body piece. Okay, there we go on that one. And then you want to do his legs as well. Now, I'm not going to do the shoes or his nose. I'm just going to leave those. I'm just texturing the body. Now you probably don't want to get too much down past his boot level because you want the boots to glue onto the front and you want it to be flush. So don't go too far down or make it too thick in that area that it's going to hinder gluing the boots onto the base. This stuff is so much fun. All right, I think I'm done with that. So we are going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back and do another step. All right, we are ready for the next step now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chippy brush here, and I'm going to be using the linen color by Folk Art, and I'm going to put a little bit of paint out on my paper plate here, And I'm gonna just dip the little edges of my brush here, and I'm gonna pull it out onto my paper plate. This is a dry brush technique, so you want your brush to be dry. You don't want it to be wet at all. You want it to be dry, so you're gonna brush some of it out on your plate, even on a paper towel if you get it too heavy. And I'm gonna start dry brushing using a very light hand. I'm gonna go over the top of the texture paste, which is going to grab some of the paint, and as you run out, just grab some more. And this is going to add different color into the board and kind of make that texture paste start to show up a little bit. Again, I don't know how much you can see on the video just because the coloring is so light, but we're going to start layering this up. I'm going to go back with the white and some ivory just to give different colors into it. You could even add, if you want to add a little bit of gray, you could add just a tiny bit of gray if you want to go more of those tones. I'm just trying to keep them as white as possible. Okay, so you don't need to worry too much about the very tip top of his head because we're going to cover him with a scarf and a little hat. So as you can see, I've dry brushed both directions. I am using a very light hand for this, and just covering the whole board, going back and forth. So now I'm going to take my, this color is ivory. I think I need another paper plate here. Put some ivory out onto a plate, and then I don't need to wash my brush at all. I'm just gonna start pulling some of this color too. Like I said, there's not a lot of paint in my bristles here. You want to dry brush it. So now I'm gonna go back over the top, adding back in some of the white color. And as you do that, you can totally start seeing the colors really come to light, or to show up with the texture paste that you put on him. I would say I'm probably using a little bit more paint with the white, going back in with the white. I just didn't want a lot of the dark, the tan or taupey color, just because I didn't want to, like I said, I want to keep him pretty white looking, but I do want that texture to start showing through. So the more, if you get too much brown, then just go over the top of it with more white. There's kind of no goofing with this because you're just kind of layering it up and adding more paint to it as you like. You're going to do this to all of the white pieces, his legs and everything. So can you see the texture going on in that? It's really just kind of giving him a cool look. Okay, so like I said, the color I'm using right now is ivory, and then I think when after I get done with this color, I'm going to go back in with some white also. And because we're layering these colors up, they really start to blend together and kind of take on a really cool look. He's very texture looking right now. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my white paint here. I'm going to put it on my plate. Let me find a palette knife here. Like I said, this is mud paint, but you can just use regular white acrylic paint. You don't have to use mud paint. All right, so I'm going to go back over the top again with the white. And see right there, I got it a little heavy, but that's okay. If I want to go back in and brush in some different color, I can do that. And it will, you need to let it dry though. You don't want to, if you get too heavy in one section, you don't want to keep putting paint on while it's wet. You need to let it dry, because if you do it while it's wet, it's just going to muddy the colors together, and you don't want that. So let your paint dry and then add a different color back in, and then repeat the steps you've already done. Repeat the colors. And you just keep going over it till you find that you like what you've got on there. And I think I'm kind of liking what I've got. Even this part right here, I think where I got a little heavy, I think his little hat's going to cover that quite a bit, so I don't need to worry about it too much. Not much of his face shows by the time we get his little hat on and his scarf on. This section of the body is the part that's really going to show. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my other pieces now, because we're going to want to do this piece and, oh, just that one. Okay, so I'm going to go back through my steps. So I'm not washing my brush out. I'm just going to dab right into that linen color. I'm going to start brushing it on. All right, I'm going to hit my little heat gun to dry this a little bit. See how real ivory this one looks compared to this? Maybe not. I don't know. I think it's a little bit darker. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some more white. Now, if you're not sure of how you how heavy-handed you want to be, because like I said, I'm brushing very lightly when I do this, and I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. Now when you do this, you can practice on a scrap piece of paper or a scrap piece of wood you might have laying around or something, just so that you can get the feel for the technique. Or even do the backside of your wood. Start with the backside of your snowman. Don't do the backside of like this one that's going to get attached to your base piece. But anything that's like the backside of this guy, you could even try it with that first if you're a little scared to start with your main piece right away. That will help. But like I said, this is a very forgiving technique. It's just all Mod Podged on. You don't have to be a wonderful painter or an experienced painter. This is just slap the paint on and make him look distressed. It's all part of the look that he's got going on. And now I did on my shoes right here, I took some of the linen color paint and I dry brushed some little sections of his shoes just to give a little bit of highlighting, a little bit of texture to it. So you can do that as well. And so I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put him all together. I decided that I feel like a lot of my distressed edges when we sanded, or I sanded, that they got a little covered up with all of the texture and everything. So I decided that I want to go back and I want to just kind of go along the edge a little bit here and there to just add some of that distressing back into the piece. It's optional, you know, it's kind of, I always say, you know, there's no right or wrong technique to any of this stuff. You just kind of do what you like. This is just what I do. It doesn't mean that's what you have to do. You can even go over the top a little bit if you want. But I'm just kind of going into the edges a little bit to bring back some of that, the wood from the sides. Okay, and I also forgot to do this piece, so don't forget that you need to texture this piece as well. You can see I'm just brushing along the edges here, just to add in some distressing. All right, and I had already went ahead and I did his legs as well. All right, so there is one last step I did that I've already done. I thought I was videoing it and I was not. So I'm gonna walk through the step again just to show you what I did. So I added some splatter, little white, kind of make it look like it's snowing, a little splatter to the nose and the feet. And then I used the linen color and added some splatter on his body, which I don't think it shows that much, but if you look up close, it does kind of add a little bit more texture, but it's completely optional. So how I did this was I took a stencil brush like this. You can also use like a stencil brush like these, but these, the bristles are kind of long, so it doesn't work as well. An old toothbrush works great for this technique. So you just water down, I put a little bit of paint on my plate here. You water it down with water just a little bit, kind of like so. It's just kind of a little puddle of paint there. And then you're going to dab off most of it onto a paper towel. And then I have like a little scrap piece of paper here. And then you're going to want to take your thumb and run it across the bottom of the bristles. And I usually like to test it first, make sure that I don't have the paint too watery or too heavy, because I just want a light splattering. So I just run my finger across the bristles like so. You can just kind of rub across the bottom of it. About, I'll add a few more to this little nose here. Probably about 5 or 6 inches away, maybe 4 to 6, and just splatter away. Okay, so that's how that's done. Now we're going to go on to putting him together. All right, we are on to the next step, and we are going to put this cute little guy together. I am going to be using this Titebond Quick and Thick glue. It sets up pretty quickly. And oh, one last thing, back up a little bit. I ended up painting using a makeup sponge, just like I showed you how to do the shoes. I used a makeup sponge, and I used colonial blue, because the scarf I'm going to put on him is blue, not the scarf, the little hat, and then the scarf is going to be red. So I thought the blue would be a nice contrast color. So that's what I used for that. So I'm going to be using the Titebond, and it's probably easiest to do this in sections. So the first thing I'm going to do, well, let's see here. I haven't put him together before, so this is live on camera that I am putting this together for the very first time. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put him onto the base. And I'm going to put some glue. If I can get my glue to come down out of my container here. All right, I'm going to run some glue along this bottom edge here and kind of put it in the corners right here. Now this piece is going to get hooked to the back, so I'm just going to put this together like this onto the base, And I'm going to give it just a couple minutes to set up. If any glue squirts out, you can wipe it off. Oh, and I do want to put a little bit of glue here and here. I think it holds better along the bottom edge here. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue there. And then put it back on. I found those sections held a little bit tighter on my pilgrims, if I did that. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this for a few seconds, let it set up a little bit. And then once it sets up just a little bit, you can leave it sitting. Like I said, it wants to fall forward, so this is kind of the tricky part. But we'll get there. Okay, so let me see if I can move this away from, you can see it a little bit. Now, you can see this piece sticking out here. Let me make sure it's in the camera view. Yeah, I believe you can. So you can see this piece sticking out here. That's what this is going to go over the top of, so that it's going to give it some support and hold it in place better. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some glue along this edge here. Okay, and then also along this back piece that's going to get glued to the back side of the snowman. Like so. All right, and then we're going to put that on here. Now you want to make sure that he, once you do this, that he is, look from the side view and make sure that he is standing up straight. So I can see in my side view here that he is nice and straight. Okay, and again, kind of push these pieces together on the front half. Okay, so I'm going to let those sit and dry just for a few minutes. I'm not going to move it too much because it will fall apart until you get it, until it sets up, which, like I said, it sets pretty quickly, so it's not going to take too long. While the base is drying over there, I am going to lace up his shoes. Now, if you purchased the add-on kit for this, you have a yard of this jute twine. I cut it in half in 2 separate pieces, so I already did this side. I'm going to show you how to do this side. So put it through, start with putting the string through the back side of the wood, and then bring it to the front, just like you're going to lace up your shoes, your tennis shoes. Okay, so make sure it's even, and then you're just going to lace up, skipping the hole, skipping every other hole. Okay, so that side's done. Now we'll do this side. You're going to crisscross the jute. Okay, make sure it's tight. All right, and then just tie it in a bow. And then once I got it tied, I unraveled the edges of or the bottom of the twine here. I just unraveled it and pulled them apart. Like so. And if you need to trim the edges, you can. I think I want to trim them just a bit. They're a little too long. Just to make it a little scruffy look in there. All right, isn't that looking really cute? Okay, so next we are going to want to glue his feet to his body here. All right, and the top part, because of the jute, it is going to stand away from the other part a little bit. So you're going to want to use some clamps. I think my glue's a little clogged up here. I'll put a little on the jute right there. Like so. And then once I put this down, I'm going to want to use some clamps or something to hold this together because of that spacing for the jute. You're going to want to have it hold tightly. So let me grab some clips here. I use these little binder clips. You can use like the little black binder office clips, or I found these at the dollar store. So I just use these to hold it together. Okay, you're going to want to push this down real good, get the glue on there, and then use these clips to hold it together. Line it all up real well. And then once you clip it, make sure that they don't move, that your pieces don't shift while they're drying. I'm going to want to put another one over here. Usually they're pretty good once you have it clipped, but definitely check it. And like I said, you are going to have this little bit of a gap here, but it's not really going to show when you have it all finished. Want to clamp the bottom too, because once you clamp up here, it's going to want to lift. So go ahead and put clamps all the way around it. Clothespins also work well. Okay, I think I want one more right here. There we go. And if I had a really long clamp, which I do in the garage, but I don't have one with me here. Where we have the lasers, I have one. But like I said, I'm not going to worry too much about that part right there. As long as the bottom is all glued on, we'll be good to go. So that needs to set up and dry. So we're going to have to let that sit until it's completely dry, because we don't want those shoes pulling off the background of this little guy. Okay, so I think while that's drying, we can probably go back to this one. It looks like it's all set up and dry. So this is what it looks like on the back side. So this is the base, and then that piece is going to fit right over that part that sticks out, that little slot that sticks out from the base. Okay, and that's what's really going to stabilize the back side of him. Some people ask, do I need to paint the back side? That's completely up to you. I'm a little on the lazy side, so I typically do not paint the back sides of mine unless it's going to, wherever I'm going to put it, it's going to really show. So that's something you might want to think about. Is it going to be in your home where it's going to show, or if the back side is not going to show, then you don't really have to worry too much about it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to glue this piece on now. Okay, so I'm going to put some glue into the corners here. Now this piece will also want to flop around a little bit until you have the front piece glued to it. So I'm going to put a little bit of, oh, and also one of the things you want to be sure of when you're doing this piece is make sure that you don't have these pieces flipped. So say like this is the back side, this is the front side. When you first get your pieces, you want to make sure that everything lines up and matches up, and that you're not working onto the back side of something, so that when you go to glue these pieces together, that you didn't actually accidentally glue the back side when you should have been gluing it the other way around. Does that make sense? You might have them flipped. Okay, so I'm going to put that on. Kind of wipe off some of this glue here. And like I said, so since that slot is a little bit larger so that you could get it through, what I'm going to do is once I have this where I want it, I'm going to set this down on the edge of the table, so you're not going to be able to see it in the video here, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand it up and I'm going to let this set right on the edge of the table so it will set in place nice and straight. So I'm going to set it on the edge of my craft table here and just let that sit up a little bit. Okay, so I've let my piece dry sitting on the side of my table. So now we are going to want to attach this piece to the base piece here. Now I'm going to take off all my clips, and then this is going to help. Once we glue this to here, this is going to help solidify this part to the base part. So I'm just going to put some glue on here. All over the board. And I'm going to want to use my clips again for this. Okay, so let's put this on here like so. Kind of squish it around a little bit, get that glue moving all over the back side of that. Line it all up, and then go ahead and put your clips back on again, keeping everything aligned as you go. Okay, and even you're going to want to put some up here because this is where it's attached now. Let me grab a few more. You can even add one at the top up here. Okay. Make sure everything's aligned. And then now you can let this set up and dry completely. You can set it off your table again so that it dries nice and straight. Again, you're gonna wanna check it. Make sure that everything is aligned straight when you start gluing everything together. All right, but probably if you had something a little crooked, it's all gonna be good in the end because you're gonna have your little cross stitch pieces or your little decorative tchotchkes that are gonna sit on the shelf. So a lot of it's not, I don't think you're gonna pay too much attention to it. So this is where I'm gonna stop at this point. So I'm gonna let it dry, and then we're gonna go on to some of the finishing parts. But this is basically what he looks like with all of the wood done. Okay, so I'm going to be back with the rest of the finishing. All right, now I'm going to teach you how I did the scarf and the little hat on his head. And as I said before, if you had purchased the fabric finishing kit for this piece, then you will have all of these pieces in your kit. So what I'm going to do first, and earlier I had said that you got a yard of this jute twine here. You actually have a yard and a half. So you're going to cut 3 different pieces at 18 inches. 2 for the shoes, 2 18-inch pieces for the shoes to lace up the shoes, and then this other 18-inch, I cut it in 2 separate pieces, so 9 inches each, and I'm going to lace or thread it through my buttons here. So I'm going to actually come up through the back side and down through the hole like so, and I actually wrapped it through twice because I wanted the thickness of it. So I threaded it through like this, and then I wrapped it one more time so that it would be thicker. and then this one goes the other way. Now we'll make it a little bit thicker on the back side of the wood, but it'll still glue down with no problem. And then I just kind of tied a knot, or I tied half of a knot, and I just kind of looped it like that. And then I'm going to cut off the ends before I glue it on, just to kind of hold it in place. So that's what I did for the buttons. As far as the scarf goes, this is a 3-inch strip. Okay, and you want to find the center of your scarf here. So find the center, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach these little separate side pieces, and we're going to layer these on. Now to cut these, you have a half a piece of the width of this one. So what I did was I took a pair of scissors, and all of these are torn. I didn't cut them, I tore them. So the way I did it was I basically counted out 8 little lines here. So one, and then so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on the 8th one, that is where I put a little snip, and then you rip it. Okay, now you might get these little pieces here. You can pull those off. You'll have enough fabric strips to go all the way through your piece. Now as you keep ripping, you're going to end up with this string here. Cut that off. Do not pull them off, because if you pull them off, then it's going to make the width of your fabric here thinner, and you don't want that, because both of these pieces measure the same. So as this gets longer and longer, as you keep ripping pieces off, just go ahead and snip those off. But you can remove like a few of these if it gets a little frayed. So again, I'll count up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I'm going to snip again right here, and then rip it again. So see how this starts to, as you keep going, it just gets longer and longer. Just trim it off, so that you don't narrow as you pull these off. It's going to narrow your width of your fabric. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. So once you have all those strips cut, you're just going to continue all the way down this piece of fabric, cutting the strips. Okay, and then fold your red piece in half, find the center. Once you find the center, open it up, and that's where I started. Okay, so here's my center line right here, and I kind of used the lines in this, or the print in this, to gauge my layout, or how far apart. Kind of used it as a little ruler. Okay, and then I started laying out these pieces. Now I pretty much I laid one down, and then I don't know if you can see the print in the video, but it's got like these little stripes, these little diagonal stripes on it. So I went 2 stripes over and then placed another one. And so you can take off these little pieces that are kind of fraying a little bit, and then another 2 pieces over and lay it down. Okay, and you're going to do this all the way down your piece or your scarf. Okay, now you can use a sewing machine to sew these down. You can glue them down. I think I'm going to try my hot glue gun. Or you can use like a fabric glue. This is a liquid stitch. It's a fabric glue. I am actually going to do some embroidery strokes on mine when I get these all glued down. So I only want to glue the outside edge. I don't want to glue down the center, because I think it'll be harder to get my needle through that. So I'm going to spread that out a little bit. Okay. Actually, I want to space these out a little bit less. Maybe about 1.5 inches. Basically, you're just going to want to lay these all out evenly across your entire scarf. Like this. And I want to leave a little bit of room at the edge, because I'm going to snip this edge with my scissors to make it frayed at the edge. or make little tassels. I guess that's what I should say. All right, so let's see. Let's put one more. I have to move these up because I moved the other side up. Like I said, just try to evenly space them out. Oops. There we go. That probably looks good. Right? Think that looks good? Okay. So, like I said, I'm working on this along with you. So I think I'm going to try my little hot glue gun here. So I'm going to run a little bit of glue on this side and a little bit of glue on this side so that I can stitch down the middle. Now you can also run like a blanket stitch down the whole entire piece. That would also work, any kind of stitch, but the stitch that I chose, I did a little sample of on a piece of fabric. Let me see if I have it here. I don't know what stitch it's called. This was another one I kind of did a little trial on. So this is the stitch I'm going to do. I think I'm going to randomly place like the little French knots there, not on every single one, but this is what I want to do. But you know, you can run a running stitch, or like I said, a blanket stitch, anything that you want to do. Get as creative as you want. You can glue them down and do no stitching if you want. So I'm going to try this one. I'm hoping the hot glue will work because it's just quick and easy. Maybe I'll run a little dab across the sides here. Just take care not to burn your fingers off. Okay, not sure if you can see that. Let me move that over so you can possibly see it in the video here. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to glue it down. I think it sticks nicely. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll continue down the whole entire scarf, and then once you get it all done, you're going to want to go ahead and, like I said, take your scissors and snip these little pieces here. I'm probably doing maybe about every 1/8 of an inch. There we go. Kind of ruffle it up, fray it up a little bit, pull on it. Okay, so then you have a really cute little edged scarf there. Super cute, right? And then for the little hat, you have this rectangle shape, kind of rectangle, kind of square. You're gonna want to, you've got a shorter side and a longer side though. Let me see, what does it measure? This measures 7.5 by 10. So you're gonna want to fold you're gonna want it, the 7.5 inch to be the length, or to be the height of it. So you're gonna want the longer side to be glued together. And again, I'm just gonna run a strip of glue, just because I'm too lazy to get out my sewing machine. But you can run it along your sewing machine as well. Do a little stitch, which would be quick and easy. But this also works for people who don't like to sew. So do what's easiest for you. Okay, I'm just going to fold this over. And this is going to create his little hat. Okay, we'll allow that to dry and set up. And then what I'm going to do is this thinner jute twine. You're going to take this, and I cut it in half. I cut 2 different pieces, and I stuck the jingle bell on there. And then you're going to want to gather up, just kind of pull it together, gather up the top of his hat here, and tie this around. Actually, I think I'm going to tie it first. We'll tie this around. Make sure your seam is in the back though. So you're going to want to pull this to the center. Like this. Okay, kind of gather it up. Pull this tight. You do want to have a little bit sticking out. You kind of want to have a little top there. Okay, I'm going to tie this in a knot. Okay, and then I'm going to stick the jingle bell on. And then tie it on. He is coming out so cute, isn't he? All these cute little add-ons and touches is just so much fun to him. All right, and then when you go to stick him on the wood, you're just going to fold up this so you give him a little beanie. So there's the little beanie, and then you're also going to have in your little kit. Let me grab it here. All right, so we also have these two little pieces here. So I'm going to snip pieces of this when I do the finishing part. And then this little snowflake is also going to get glued on. But for the hat, you're just going to take your top piece, and you're going to stretch this over his little head here, like so. Okay, and you kind of want this to flop forward. And if you need to, if you want it all scrunched up like this, or however you want it to look, you can stick a little bit of glue underneath there if you want to kind of hold it in place. But this just slides right over the top of his head like that. And then once you stick the scarf on, his nose is going to kind of overlap everything, kind of like this. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish stitching my scarf. All right, I am back and I am here to show you how he turned out. He is super adorable, isn't he? So once I glued the little stripes to his scarf, I went ahead and I did some embroidery stitches on there. I did little French knots and this little red stitch. I'm not sure what it's called, but I thought it was cute, so I went with it. Now you don't have to do that if you want it to be a quicker, easier project. You can just glue or stitch or whatever you want to do to glue down the stripes and just cut the edges. You don't have to make the detail on it. I just really wanted I wanted the extra little finishing touches on there. So from there, I cut some of the greenery up and I hot glued it to his little hat here and attached the little snowflake. Glued his nose down, and then I glued the buttons down here with the hot glue gun. So, and as you can see, his feet are all finished as well. He's so large that I can't really get him all in one piece in the shot here, but as you can see, the little bits and pieces of him. He is a great size for a tiered tray size items. So like little blocks like this can sit on him, some little garlands, that type of thing. Or if you're stitching some pillows, cute little pillows would be adorable on this little shelf. So I hope you enjoyed the project. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe down below. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment in the box below, or you can email me at info@paisleysandpolkadots.com and I will get back to you. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.